Okay. So, hello everyone. Good evening. My name is Vandana, and I'll be your host tonight. And we have Fedor as our presenter tonight, and she will be talking about havening. Um, okay, I am Jim. I'm making you host as well, so you can add admit the people while I'm reading Fedor's bio.
Oh no, you're going to read my bio. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I
I
hope it's the short one.
yes, I made it like very short. So, Feather, Delia Windwalker, practicing as of like Feather Wind Wisdom, or Windwalker, right? Specializes in emotional wellness, guiding clients to release emotional burdens and achieve authentic mental health using heavening techniques as her core approach. Feather combines neuroscience with the sacred healing touch, enhancing brain chemistry and promoting resilience. And since 2018, she has integrated Havening with neuro-linguistic programming, hypnosis, and brain health coaching. She also collaborated with Dr. Sarah. She had joined us tonight, and on using the essential oils and enhance emotional wellness. Further facilitate workshops, study groups, and certifications, offering tools for stress relief and self-care. In 2023, she joined the humanitarian Havening Group, providing pro bono support to the victims of crisis. Thank you, Feder, for joining us tonight, and over to you.
Thank you so much for hosting and all that you've done to make this manifest. And yes, and thank you for mentioning Dr. Sarah Schulman, who introduced me big time to the essential oils and aromatherapy and their use in emotional regulation, which is what havening is all about. And also one of her mentors is here, Maria Farner from, where are you logging in from, Maria? Maria, you're from the farthest away.
Bozeman, Montana.
Bozeman, Montana.
Wow.
Um, both of these lovely women are coaching me in adding essential oils and exploring how emotional health can be elevated with the application of those oils along with the havening touch. Is pretty fascinating. I've had some really interesting experiences with that. So this is an experiential workshop. There's going to be, and as we now know on Zoom, we always have to have slides if we're going to learn something. So I have a slide presentation, but it facilitates the experience of havening, which I'm going to just, there are a number of people here who probably know the havening touches, but what I'm going to do is show you the 3 touches. Just watch them now, and then I'm going to invite you while I'm presenting with the slides to do the touch while I'm doing the presentation. And then I'll explain why that's the experiential part as we move through it. So there are 3 different ways in the havening protocol where we are activating the neurochemistry, the delta wave change amplification, and that is by touching our face. So it could be your forehead, just across your forehead like this, or it could be across your cheeks like this, or I often just put my whole hand. These days, I like to go put my whole hand and just gently come down to my chin. Maybe a heart shape, any of those kind of motions on your face. You do what it feels right for pressure for your own self. It's very light. It's like for those women who've maybe ever put on powder, it might be how you would spread powder on. Maybe not as deep a touch as if you were putting on lotion, but it could be. So it's going to be a light touch, and it can use the palms of your hands or just your fingertips, whatever works best for you. And then I just automatically went to the other one that I use all the time, which is the hand havening, which is actually stimulating your palms like this. And the other method, which we are taught in havening training, I'm going to tilt my camera a little bit so you can see, it's taking the palms of the hands and putting them on your shoulder and just gently giving yourself a hug down to your elbow and lifting. And you only go one way. And I can talk more later about other ways that you can use the havening touch, but these are the three in the primary teaching that we get as practitioners. So now I'm going to start my slides as soon as I can figure out how to get them shared again. And I'm going to invite you to hold on a second. Don't do too much havening yet, because we're going to get the slides going. Let's see. Present. Did we say presenter view? How's that?
It's perfect.
That's perfect. Okay. So you already heard who I am. The name of my my practice is Featherwind Wisdom. I say I'm tending your inner guide. I'm using 21st century brain science and ancient healing arts. And I call myself a neurosensory practitioner because I am not just using, oops, sorry about that. I'm trying to find the little arrow to make it go. I'm not just using, oh, could you, Wandana, could you mute anyone who isn't muted, just so we have a.
All are muted, except you.
There. I call myself a neurosensory practitioner because I am combining other things that are neurosensory or psychosensory, as Dr. Ronald Rudin likes to call it, with the havening techniques, which the havening techniques are so flexible. They can be used with so many other healing practices. It's truly amazing. And one of my mentors calls it a secret sauce. So I'm also a 5-year student of neurolinguistic programming and neo-Ericksonian hypnosis with Doug O'Brien, who has been a havening practitioner since the beginning in 2013, and studied NLP and hypnosis back in the 80s with Tony Robbins and some other really famous people who developed those things. So I've added those to my toolkit, but still havening is the #1 thing that I do. See if I can move this on. I just want to give this little tiny disclaimer. I'm not even going to read the whole thing. This is neuroscience. It is a constantly evolving field. So we don't know everything about what's going on when we create these delta waves and we use these techniques. I am a practitioner. I am an advocate, an ambassador, but I am not a trainer. So what I'm teaching and sharing with you tonight is exactly what I would share with my clients as a practitioner. And almost everything is what I've learned from the founders of havening techniques, Dr. Ronald Rudin, who's an internist MD, and my mentor, Dr. Steve Rudin, who is a dental surgeon and expert on dental phobia. So, and then I do advanced trainings with other people who are licensed therapists and also neuroscientists. So what we're going to do is start with, this is the experiential part. The first thing we do in a havening session is we assess the subjective unit of distress of our client. So this is just like if you were going to go see, let's say you had an emergency room visit and you had an injury and they would ask you, what's your pain scale? They would say 0, you don't have any pain. 10, you're like, please put me to sleep because this is so bad, right? So what we want to do with havening is we want to assess the kind of emotional elevation of the client's situation, whatever they're bringing to us, because when Dr. Rudin first brought havening to the world, he was curing phobias, he was curing fears. So it was like, how bad is this fear? So what we do is we try to assess that. Now I put 0 is like the most peaceful and calm state you could be in, like right after meditation, massage, yoga, something like that. And then 10 is where you're really freaking out. That's the fight, flight, freeze. You're in total distress. You might even be dissociating. And I even have had a client who could almost go into thanatosis, which is playing dead. So that's the range. The sort of place where probably most of us are right now are somewhere in the 1 to 5 area, because we're attentive and aware. We're here, we're paying attention to what's going on. And then from like 5 up, you're getting more activated, or you're going on alert. So that's when there's something that's making you a little bit more, I'm going to use the word activated. So that's a scale of activation from 0 to 10. So right now, I'm just going to invite you, and this is where the experiential part is. Let's see, I lost the slide. Where are you? So check in with yourself and just say for a moment. So for instance, I couldn't get my camera working the way I wanted, but now I'm actually okay with it. So I was right before we got together. I asked Donna to just hold people in the waiting room because I was getting a little distressed. And I was probably at a 4. And I'm probably around a 3 right now because we're going and I'm feeling pretty good. But just take a moment and just check in with your own. You might want to close your eyes even and think, where am I? How am I coming into this experience? Has anything happened right before you got here that maybe elevated your activeness of activity of sort of distress or awareness? And just if you want to, you could put it in the chat, or you could just write it down to remember. And now I'm going to ask you to start doing the havening touch and on yourself, and I'm going to do it too. And if you feel comfortable doing it on the camera, that's fine. It actually is great for me to see. I can't see all of you, but it's great for me to see that people are using the havening touch. This face havening can amplify your delta wave by as much as 90 times the baseline. The hand havening, about 10, and the shoulder healing touch, about 10. So I love to use the hand havening because it's so, I mean, I love to use the face havening because it's so fast, gets the delta waves going. But I also really love to use the hand havening because you can do it anytime, anywhere. And I mentioned the aromatherapy. Tonight I'm using lime. I don't know why it came up, but I use a pendulum sometimes. And I use a pendulum and I came up with lime, and it's zest for life. And I thought, well, yeah, because havening to me is life. Like, that's just where I want. So I have a little lime kind of on the sort of my wrist, and I can smell that. I don't put it on my fingers because I don't want to get it in my eyes. So I'm just saying what I do with the aromatherapy part of this, or the essential oil part of this. You have seen people do this. You have seen people do this. You have seen people give lectures. You have watched a TED Talk where people are doing this. So while I'm talking, I invite you to use the havening touch as much as you feel comfortable with. You can't really overdo this. And Dr. Ronald Rudin, who is just he's a cherished soul for me. He starts every one of his teachings with a mantra, we'll call it. So applying the healing touch, applying the havening touch, I open my mind to learning. I open my heart to friendship. I may choose to feel safe, peaceful, and calm. And we usually say that 3 times. So if you want to, everybody's muted. You can say it if you want to with me. I'll say it one more time. I open my mind to learning. I open my heart to friendship. I may choose to feel safe, peaceful, and calm. And this is just one of the examples of self-care with havening, using a mantra. And Dr. Rudin was very clear when I did the training with him. I didn't invent these techniques. I discovered how healing touch works. For eons, healers have applied touch, sometimes using feathers. And these are gifts that Mother Nature gave us. We apply touch, we shift our focus, we use our imaginations, we create this electrochemical state that is an emotional and mental safety. It is an inner haven. And it is really the most basic of soothing techniques that we've been given, because this is what Mother Nature wants us to do to our babies. Touch our babies. Touch their little cheeks, touch their foreheads, make them smile. It's really, watching babies getting havened is amazing. And it's so important. That touch is so important. So what I'm amplifying for you today is that you can really do it for yourself for a lot of the benefits that are really about mental and emotional health. So it's extremely accessible, as you can tell right now. You're listening to me chatter away, and maybe you're doing some havening. And what you're doing is you're tending your inner guide, and you're creating a self-soothing and calm. So the DIY havening is reducing stress, creating calm, helping to avoid burnout and increase resilience, and often replacing intrusive and negative thoughts, reclaiming your better self and your better self-talk. In contrast, the founders of the havening techniques, the doctors Ron and Steve Rudin, really came to their curiosity because they were wondering, why is it that we can cure phobia, which is fear, which is a place which is not safe, right? Haven is safe. Phobia is, I'm not safe. This is freaking me out. That's the number 10 usually. And a really full-blown phobia is somewhere in the 8, 9, 10 range. So when we work with a practitioner, we can get to anxiety, grief, fears, distress, adverse experiences, trauma, intrusive memories, and even actually physical pain. So Dr. Ronald Rudin is an internist MD with a PhD in organic chemistry, and he was very, very curious about how this, healing touch works. The havening techniques is what he's developed. And he was able to actually help people relieve pain, various kinds of pain. Now, I know there are a lot of wonderful people out there who focus on the mind, body, overcoming pain. And havening can be the secret sauce to some of those somatic healing techniques. I have had some change in pain for myself since I began havening, which is about 7.5 years ago. I have completely stopped using NSAIDs and Tylenol and any prescription meds at all. I don't use any for pain management related to severe advanced osteoarthritis. So I was really doing my stomach in by taking some of those things. And I have a very, very little need for any of that anymore. And I do attribute it to the fact that I'm havening much of my day, not all day long, but I'm havening frequently the way I am right now with my hands. So anyway, the healing part is, with a practitioner guiding you, we can help clear your mind and heart and your soul of these emotional burdens that sometimes are called trauma. And that's where the Rudins started. They went from phobia to trauma. And the guidance is so gentle, and it's so quickly restoring your resilience and so quickly restoring hope and vitality. I had one session of havening. I was in the abyss. I was totally in the abyss. I was in deep, complex grief. And as soon as that session was over, I said, I have to learn how to do this. Now, everything didn't go away all at once, but working with a practitioner really got me interested in how does this work, why does this work, and what else can I do for myself. So with so when you're going to a practitioner, you've got what I call an amplification with dual attunement. So right now we're kind of all maybe havening ourselves a little bit, and we're a little bit tuned in if you're watching the motion as well as watching the slides. But when you're in a one-on-one with a practitioner, you've really got that going. It is like going to any medical provider for your routine and emergent needs. You're going to get guidance on how to reveal what's going on. You're going to get protocols to resolve the issues. You're going to get support for what you do in between the sessions for your own self-care, and you're going to be able to focus on your outcome for building your own resilience and integrating your own personal power. And in a lot of ways, I am an emotional coach, but there's the do-it-yourself part too. So I like to use the metaphor of mental health like your daily oral health. So every day we floss, we brush, we rinse our mouth out. If you use havening every day, you can take care of your mental health in a completely new level, right? Because it's a lifestyle. You can do it anytime, anywhere. You can do all these things that I've just mentioned already before: create calm, increase your resilience, restore balance, emotional balance. You can enhance your performance. One of my clients worked on his golf game. I mean, you just never know what somebody's going to bring to havening, because it's so flexible. There's so many ways you can use it. Imagining your future, it opens up other viewpoints, and it can really set in choice for achieving desire. Now, when Dr. Ron Rudin teaches about havening, he says, look, we've got 3 pillars in mental health. We have psychotherapy, which is talk. Now, I'm a survivor of 40 years of talk therapy. Psychopharmacology, which is medicine, medications, which is both, which is very much based on diagnosis system. I have the little guy with doing the roulette there on that pillar, because in my experience, it was, oh, let's see if we can give you another diagnosis to try this new drug. So over the 40 years of talk therapy, I tried a lot of different emerging drugs, mostly for depression, but there were other things that were going on, anxiety and that kind of thing. And then Dr. Rudin says, and look, we've got this whole other realm, this whole other pillar for mental health care, which there are many, many ways to access. And he calls that the psychosensory healthcare. And there are non-specific, I'm going to call them also somatosensory, and they are psychosensory modalities and techniques. There are many more than I've listed here, but they go from acupuncture to yoga. And I've just highlighted the 3 that I regularly use havening with. So I mentioned the essential oils, which could be considered aromatherapy. I use havening with that. I use havening with my exercise program. I do a Pilates reformer routine where I do a lot of core exercises on my core and my legs and my feet to keep my ambulation really strong. And while I'm doing that, I'm saying strong and flexible while I'm giving myself base havening, because I believe it helps. And it also keeps me doing my exercises. So it helps me focus on that. Also in meditation, I've never been a good meditator. I've been attending Quaker meeting for, I don't know, 55 years of my life, I think, since I was pretty young, a teenager. And I'm terrible at the silent meditation part, at getting into it. So now that I have havening, I'll do a little havening, and I sit in the corner where people won't notice me. But and there's just many, many places where you can use you can have a somatosensory psychosensory experience and use havening. So then Dr. Rudin says, look, we have these specific modalities, and havening techniques is one of them because we're inputting touch. We're also inputting language. We're going to have a demonstration at the end of this. And so when we get to the end, we'll be able to see how I use the language part of this as input. So language is auditory input, touch is sensory input. There are other techniques which fall into this category. EMDR, which is called EMDR, is a therapeutic technique which only licensed therapists are trained to do. It uses the delta waves that are created through eye movement, which is when Dr. Rudin first taught havening techniques, he did include eye movement, and the eye movement is, if you can see me, it's taking your eyes and looking to the right and the left, back and forth, and that creates a delta wave. But that is not the only thing that is done in EMDR. It's a complete therapeutic protocol that has many steps to it, but the part that is the sensory input is moving the eyes, and that creates delta. Then there's EFT, the tapping, the emotional freedom techniques. Those are actually related to the TFT, thought field therapy techniques. And those were the techniques that Dr. Rudin experimented with to cure phobias and was so blown away by curing phobias with tapping. That's what launched his study into finding out, how does touch change how we feel? And how does touch make us feel safe and clear out this fear, this place of not being safe? So he spent 10 years, he and his brother spent 10 years researching touch and emotional content and how that all works together. And I've never seen a bibliography of the papers that they read, but I've heard that they're like stacks that are meters high. They read a lot of scientific papers, and they got really, really good at doing research because they did that really for 10 years. And then I included hypnosis here, partly because I'm using hypnosis and I think it's doing auditory and sensory input. So I added that in there. I don't know if Dr. Rudin would approve. We won't show him my slides today. All right, so if you have been doing some havening and you remember what your number was, has it changed? Has your number changed? And if anybody wants to put themselves on the mic and say something, I would be glad to hear if you've experienced a change. Anybody want to say anything? You can raise your hand and Wandana can let you know. Okay.
I was a 4, and after havening, I went to a 2.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. So I invite you to keep on doing it if you want to get below wherever you are. If you're like happy where you are and you just want to keep listening, that's fine too. But this is the experiential part. I have had some people leave blissed out. And so they might not remember everything that I said, but I think you're going to remember what you need to remember, because your other than conscious self or your subconscious self is absorbing the information that you need. You've opened up neural pathways in a different way with the delta waves. So what is happening as you self-apply the havening techniques? Well, the calming effects are attributed to the changes in your brain as electroceutical activity or electroceutical activity. That means it's electrical and chemical. So the sensory input creates an electrical system, and there are people who can explain all that science to you. It's not me. Just trust me. They've explained it to me and I said, okay, I accept that happens, right? This touch changes activity in your electrical system, sends through the skin receptors into the brain, and that increases the baseline of that brainwave activity. What happens then is we get this down regulation in the stress hormones, cortisol, norepinephrine, and adrenaline. So we change our brain and we change our body and the mind. It's truly remarkable how this works. So this is the neurochemistry that I like to call the alchemy of the gods cocktail, because then once you've got that electroceutical phenomenon created by the touch, you release a cornucopia of neurochemicals and neurotransmitters. The good stuff. You have your brain's pharmacy right there at your fingertips. And the reason I call it the God's cocktail is because I went to enough trainings where somebody was calling it the dogs, and I was like, no, 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 no. It's God's. It's GABA, oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin. And I'm not going to go into what that is, but you can always look up these neurochemicals and learn more about it. But basically, it's the good stuff. And they each have different roles to play as neurotransmitters or neurochemicals, and they relate to how we feel. So so you've probably heard, you get a dopamine hit when you open your email or when you win a video game or something like that. Well, this is a different level of dopamine. This is a different kind of dopamine thing. But it's truly remarkable that what we have here is a way to change our neurochemistry without popping a pill. And I stopped popping the pills, which I really like. So transforming your brain with the God's cocktail is touch, your attention, because there is a little bit of attention thing going on here. You're listening to me, you're having some attention with it. This is in the self-care world. We'll come around to how you do that for yourself. But right now I've got your attention, and hopefully you're doing some havening touch, or you already have. And there's also some imagination. I'm sure some of you are thinking, wow, this is cool. What else could I do with this? That happens. So just to sort of summarize what I feel about this is that this emotional alchemy is for neuroplasticity. And this is so naturally occurring, and you can just do this with the havening touch. So with the havening neuroplasticity at your fingertips, you can be in charge of realigning your brain very naturally. So I believe havening expands your consciousness, reinforces your desire for self-care, amplifies your ability to see positive outcomes. And that's all do it yourself, right? You can do this yourself. And accessing your intuition with havening is a powerful asset for integrating and aligning your purpose and your goals with your path toward living into your best self. So I do like to say I'm a coach for emotional wellness, because that's kind of where my mission is to get to that place. I like to think that havening expands consciousness and opens connections to your body, your mind, your heart, and your soul. And you're expanding your mind with a new, and it is new, it's only been around for a little more than 10 years, drug-free psychedelia. And you can access neuroplasticity and have neurogenesis with havening techniques. And the science around neuroplasticity and neurogenesis is exploding right now. There's all kinds of people who talk about it. The havening trainer practitioner who talks about it the most is Dr. Kate Truitt, and I have served in her trainings, and she's quite the neuroscientist. I'm more the earth mama. So I teach this self-care a little different than she does, but she has a good book out called Healing in Your Hands, where you can learn how to do more neuroscience-based protocols. So I think I've already really said this. You can make new neural pathways. And when you nurture your intuition with havening, you are growing confidence, resilience, resources, and self-love. And I believe havening can guide you toward inner wisdom and connect your subconsciousness and your other than conscious self. So these are concepts that I've come across in studying hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming, is that we have this other than conscious self, and we have subconscious, as what Milton Erickson, the father of modern medical hypnosis, called it, subconscious. But these are the parts of our brain processing that we're not aware of. They're not the cognitive executive function parts. They're the parts that are doing things in the background, the parts that probably inform our dreams. And just while we're using havening, we just don't know what we could access because it's just transformational. So I believe that you can transform, you can contain and transform emotional content. And that's my experience. And I'm going to tell you about my experience because this is a true thing that my mom, this is a true thing. And when I got into havening and I did my havening training, my mother, who is a very smart woman, she was watching what was going on with me. And I had learned about this thing called the green goo, which is what the caterpillar is. It dissolves into the chrysalis before it becomes the butterfly. The green goo are imaginal cells. And my mom gave me this birthday card where I hope you can all see that the driver's license has a caterpillar on it and the butterfly has been pulled over for speeding. And I mean, the real thing about this is a real thing. Imaginal cells, they understand. They have a focus to become the butterfly. That's what their future is. But they're no longer the caterpillar. They're just the green goo. And I was listening to Martha Beck give a podcast or talk about how sometimes in our lives to have transformation, we have to be the green goo. And when I found havening, I was the green goo. And then I'm not the green goo anymore. My mom gave me this card. And in the inside, it says, happy birthday to someone who's always evolving. And I really believe that is the capability now, of course, I was working with a practitioner, but for me, it's continued to be a lifestyle choice to continue to use havening. And I believe it still does inform maybe the accessorizing of the butterfly. So I like to think that there's 4 parts of the healing and the personal experience. So you can really get in touch with your body and enhance your sense of physical self with havening. You can use havening to explore your thoughts, know your mind better. You can get into feeling your creative expression through your heart's messages. And some of the havening practitioners use something called heart math, which is a very useful way to access what's going on in the heart, because the heart and the mind and the body are all, they're all connected. We're all connected. And then I find it very fascinating that we can also enter into mystical possibilities and spiritual insights. And I just read something recently that, okay, so a change in consciousness is a way to access miracles and magic. And that's what we're doing. We're changing our consciousness when we use these techniques in a very, very subtle way. We're healing, we're getting emotional regulation, we're growing, but we're doing all of this without any drugs, without taking entheogens, a psychoactive substance. It's actually really pretty remarkable. I like to say remarkable because that's one of Dr. Rudin's favorite words. It's remarkable. So where are you now? And if anybody's gotten lower, really lower, and you want to come on to the mic and say something, or you want to put it in the chat, go ahead. I can't see the chat. Wandana can see the chat. Anybody
I think I've gone from a 7 to a 3.
Oh, good. Madeline. Yeah, great. I'm glad to hear that. And thank you for sharing that you were as high as 7 when you came in, because that's pretty high. And 7 is not unusual. I mean, this world we live in, I mean, okay, I'm going to just hope everybody's havening right now in case you haven't heard. There was an earthquake out in California. And, if you know people in California, that could immediately lift you up. Well, when you hear something like that, you can start using havening right away and keep yourself from getting too excessively or elevated to a point that is really not comfortable. And the thing is that we're very vigilant in this culture. There's bad news all the time. So if you can keep your emotional regulation down, I would say, from 4 to 5 would be like the maximum I really want to walk around every day with. But every day it's going to go up. Last week I got pulled over for speeding. I didn't have on my butterfly suit, but I only got a warning. But I was like on my way to the wellness center and I got pulled over for speeding. And I'll tell you, the whole time I was waiting for the cop to get out of the car because I knew I was speeding. I was just sitting there going, havening. Everything's going to be all right. I was giving myself positive messages. So we're going to move on to positive messages. This is self-care. I'm giving you an anecdotal. Okay. The emotional first aid part. This is where, when there's an emergent anxiety raising situation, getting pulled over for speeding on the way to an appointment, start havening. And I don't know if I was humming. I think it was probably saying something, but I could have been humming. So I could have done row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. I could have done that. I could have just chanted, and I think I did chant. I think I was like, well, it's going to be all right. Well, I haven't gotten pulled over in a long time. Well, it's going to be all right. Well, it's going to be all right. I left enough time so I won't be too late for my appointment. I was trying to give myself positive messages. I was trying not to give myself any negative messages. So what you want to do is, if you have any of these situations, like I've just examples, hearing bad news, like an earthquake or a cyclone or a tornado or whatever, and you're listening to the news and all of a sudden you hear something and you don't want to hear it, that's a really good time to give yourself a little havening. Experiencing an accident or observing an accident, being third person, or hearing about an accident, any of those situations. I've used it a lot in pre-op. So I've had some joint replacements and some other things, surgical things, and I've used havening in pre-op. I've actually used havening while I've had some procedures when my hands could be free. Medical testing right before going into the MRI machine, when you can still be moving around, I'm not too bad with needles, but if I had a needle thing, I'd be havening myself before I got any of those jabs. So the thing is that when there's a emergent or shocking experience, that can be encoded. And this is something that we talk about in the training, and this, for self-care, it's not really that important to understand it, but all the experiences we've had in our lives, they add up to the story of all the emotional content that we need to keep safe. And those are the things that we might call triggers or trauma, things that are information about trauma or information that trigger the response, like phobic response. So the theory is that if we haven when we get in an emergent experience, information or the actual experience, if we are havening, that we can possibly prevent permanent amygdala encoding as trauma. And that's for the neuroscientists to expand upon, but that's how I understand it from Dr. Kate Truitt and from Dr. Ronald Rudin. This is a tool for emotional first aid right at the moment. So keep that in mind as you go through the adventures of the way life is right now, because it's not so much fun out there. So, I think I missed a slide here, or anyway, we can do this. Sorry. So emotional first aid is really what we use with humanitarian havening, and humanitarian havening is a group of people who've been to refugee camps and to sites where something has happened, like a school shooting. And all we do in humanitarian havening is emotional first aid, but we facilitate it. So we use positive messaging, usually one single word, and we find out how would you like to feel right now. And safe is one of the things that people want. They want to feel peaceful, they want to feel calm, hopeful, or they might just need to say, I'm okay. So we just help people use those words. And the previous slide, I said humming, singing, and chanting. So humming or singing or chanting or putting on music that people can sing or hum or chant with is great. There's some wonderful, if you go to the Humanitarian Havening Facebook page, there's some wonderful, I think, videos of some havening going on in a refugee camp in Lesbos where the women are in the dining tent and they're kind of like in a conga line and they're all havening each other's arms. It's truly beautiful to watch. And there's music going on. So with emotional first aid, where we're using positive messages to represent what we wish to feel instead of a negative response, what do we say? Well, what not to say is we don't use any negative messaging. We always stay on the positive. And this is the integration that we do talk about in Havening training with neuro-linguistic programming, although we don't talk about it as neuro-linguistic programming. But as I've studied NLP, I've really learned how important it is to be really attentive, to listen to the words that people use and help adjust them to be positive, because the positive is what is going to make that neuroplasticity, that new pathway, the neurogenesis, work in our favor for healing and for downregulating emotional content that could otherwise be very much encoded and stay with us and trigger us in the future. So a few things that you can say is, if you're with somebody or with yourself, the worst is over, help is on the way, I'm okay, this will pass. You're not alone, which I think the brain works with that, not alone, okay. It could be, I'm with you, you have a companion if you don't like to say not alone. Somebody who's into really clean NLP language caught me on that. I'm getting the help that I need. And those are just a few ways of taking the language there. So how long can you safely apply the Havening touch? Well, as long as you want, there's no overdose. So if you wanted to keep doing it the whole time that we've been looking at these slides, that would have been fine. As Madeline shared, she went from a 7 down to a 3 or a 2, and that's a lot, for that's her doing it herself while she's being distracted and having her attention brought onto this slide presentation. So you can imagine what can happen in a session. It can be very different. So no overdose, simple go-to, self-care, anytime, anywhere. What are the indicators? Well, there'll be some somatic shifts. Sometimes you will notice something change in your body. Yawning, laughing, relaxation, new thoughts. And in a recent training, someone said, oh my gosh, I had a client who just kept belching. And so you can imagine that there can also be other body reactions that could happen. But the thing is, you've had a somatic experience and things are going to change. Yawning is very common. Laughing is very common. And new thoughts like aha moment. Ooh, they're just delightful. So I just want to promote the idea that you can have self-care with Havening as a lifestyle. You could begin your day with Havening, with prayer, with meditation, with exercise. You can add Havening to set positive intentions with mantras or chants that you can create with the help of a practitioner or a guide or your own spiritual path. You can use Havening to avoid secondary distress. So consuming the news media, number one thing that traumatizes people in the world is the news media. So, think about that. And if you're reading a newspaper, it's a little harder, but if you're listening to the news or watching television, you can sit there and be doing havening. And then practice havening to downregulate any distress at the end of the day. So I would really love to bring this more out to people who are caregivers, first responders, people who are in stressful positions in any kind of public service, healthcare or otherwise, because at the end of the day, they're bringing stuff home. And in just 5 minutes of doing some self-care with havening, doing their own self-care mantras could really change the level of burnout that they're experiencing. So last time, so anybody wants to pitch in if they've still been doing havening, if they've got a change, feel free to let us know. Anyone else? Anyone want to share anything? Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Janice?
Okay. Oh, I was just going to say, at the very beginning, like you, I couldn't get on, the Zoom, and I was freaking out. So I was really kind of high, probably a 6. But then as soon as you started talking and doing the thing, I think I regulated with your energy even before I started doing the havening myself.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
What are you at now, Janice?
Well, I was at a 1 when you started talking, when you did, I just got to a 1.
You got it really fast. You got it fast. Are you okay?
I'm a Reiki practitioner.
I was going to say you're a healer, right?
No, I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but honestly, and I'm never a 1, I have to say. I'm never a 1.
Okay.
So that was good. Thank you.
Great. I want to turn the slides off. So let me finish the slides. Does anyone else have a big change? Did anyone else want to share? Just check. Okay. I was looking down at your picture too. Oh no. Okay. Let me just go through this. So I like to say that, I mean, this is actually the havening community. Havening is a way toward better living through neuroscience. That's sort of the byline for havening. My havening colleagues and I hold a common vision. We believe that havening makes a real difference to humanity. How will you like to bring havening to the world? Humanitarian havening is the torch that I carry for a movement for emotional first aid response and self-care in critical incidents. So I am available as a volunteer to work remotely and in local incidents. If anyone ever hears of an emergent situation, I am certainly available to do that volunteer work. And then this is who I am again. I'm a speaker advocate. I'm a humanitarian havening ambassador and volunteer. I facilitate for practitioner training and certification programs, and I give peer practitioner support. So for people who are studying havening, I often will work with them as a practitioner to help them go through experientially what it is like to have a havening session. So today was about the DIY part and giving you a little bit of a window into what it's like for a practitioner guided session. And just at the, I put this in just right before we got on, and Wandana's going to put some things in the chat that you can copy. There's a lot of information about havening out there. And there are a lot of people who opine about havening because they're therapists. And I always wonder, have you ever had a session? Because as a facilitator of training with Dr. Kate Truitt, who gives CEUs, I have met many therapists who've come to get CEUs and have never experienced a havening session. And you can't really have an opinion until you experience this. Even the experience that you had tonight, that's a self-applied experience. So it is really different to have an experience of havening with it's attunement. And for a Reiki practitioner, I'm not surprised that she got down really, really low, because there's these things called mirror neurons. That's another neuroscience thing that I'm not going to explain. But Janice saw what was going on, and it soothed her. And then she also had the, how much she applied. So the most rapid changes happen with other practitioners of any kind of actually healing work. It's truly astounding. And my first case study was with a Reiki master trainer, and it blew me away. She had a 10 and she went to a 0. And it was the first time I ever gave it to somebody. But there's something about the attunement that we have. I should turn off this slide. So what I want you to know is, if you want to know more about havening, talk to somebody who's a practitioner or a trainer, or go to one of the introductions from the trainers, because they give the science background. Watch some of the videos. You can find out the ones that are really good from me. And I wanted to tell you about this particular trainer, Dr. Robin Youngson. He's in New Zealand. He has a science training that's only $90. It's a 4-hour training. It tells you everything about the science, and he is just the sweetest man. He's written a couple books about havening. It's changed his life and his practice as a medical practitioner. He's now focused totally on havening. So I just wanted to share that, and I'm going to stop the share now so I can see everybody, if I can figure out how to stop the share. Actually, Vandana, can you stop the share? Because I'm not even seeing my Zoom instructions. Oh, there they are. I can stop it there. Okay.